I'm not a family man, Riker. And yet, Starfleet has given me a ship with children aboard. Yes, sir. And I don't feel comfortable with children.
Welcome back to Nerds on a Couch, a podcast about two nerds on a couch talking about all things nerdy. So for this episode, I, on the request of you, Sydney, watched the very first episode of Star Trek Next Generation because I, despite being how bloody nerdy I am on many other things, have never really watched Star Trek. I have seen the J.J. Abrams film and its sequel, so Star Trek and Star Trek Into Darkness. And I think one or two films of the original when I was young. I think I watched the one with the Gorn and one of the Tribbles. But that's about all my experience with Star Trek.
So it was time. This is long overdue.
Yeah, so many people have been telling me to watch it, and I just haven't gotten around to it. I know, it just never really piqued my interest too much, but this was a good opportunity for me to go, okay, let's finally see what everyone's talking about.
And we should mention that the series that I had him watch was Star Trek The Next Generation. So that particular entry of the Star Trek franchise.
Indeed. So I watched the first episode. It looked like it was an extended episode because it was an hour and 30 minutes. So it was Encounter at Farpoint, parts 1 and 2. So for a first impression of kind of like the Star Trek universe, I think it's a really interesting start. Like, I like a lot of like the world building that is in this episode, but it's a really kind of manic episode. It really feels like there's two episodes just kind of sandwiched into one with this. Do you remember the first episode of the show?
Was that the one where they landed on a planet and Wesley was put on trial because he broke something? Was it that one?
No. The first episode doesn't feel very distinct. It just kind of throws you in. So the first episode is literally they're in the middle of deep space, and then they encounter this weird life form that's putting humanity on trial for being savage. For the first 20 minutes, they're trying to prove that they're not savage, whilst this being transports them to was it the court of the post-apocalypse horror? This. But then that story just kind of goes, well, you know what? Let us prove to you that we're not savage, and then the entity goes, well, all right, and then just kind of transports them back to the ship, and then they go back to Farpoint, which seems to be this base that the inhabitants have created in order to be a part of the space government thing. Do you know what that's called?
Starfleet.
Starfleet, yeah. It's about these inhabitants who have built this really nice city in order to impress the people of Starfleet to join them or something. And it turns out that the city they made was actually a giant floating octopus in space.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's story-wise, as I said, it doesn't really ease you in.
You do have to be a little kind because it is an older series, so we should preface it by saying that was early 90s?
It was 1987 when this came out, September 1987. Which, by the way, comparing this to Doctor Who in 1987, the effects in the show are bloody amazing. I was like, this came out at the same era as the Seventh Doctor? It's like Doctor Who was almost famously cancelled because they just couldn't compete with the quality that American TV shows were putting out there. And looking at the show, you can really tell that. Considering that this is some of the first times CGI was used in a show ever, it surprisingly holds up pretty well. It's not the most convincing stuff, but I've seen things on TV that look worse than this.
Right,
now.
Me too.
It's really impressive, and also with the show being what it is, being a show being made back in the 80s, it's amazing how much actually it kind of predicts in the future. Like the fact there's a woman character who's got like a really modern haircut. Like she could have been plucked right out of 2019.
Interesting. So a lot of foreshadowing for real life society.
Yeah, like not all the women wear dresses, but not all the guys wear pants. Like there was this one like really buff guy just sort of wandering around in like the classic Star Trek skirt, which I thought was pretty cool. Like the fact that like it just seemed like a very inclusive environment, is like especially for 1987.
So let me ask you this: what was your first impression of Captain Jean-Luc Picard, played by Patrick Stewart? How did you like him as a captain?
Well, I love the actor in general. Grew up with him in X-Men and all that stuff. So I knew I was probably gonna like it because I just really like the actor. But just as a character, he's probably the best thing about the show.
Right.
What I love is that he can be really stern and really quite harsh. Like I love when he first meets his second in command. He's like, "Hey, could you help me with kids because I don't like kids, and I don't want to be around them." Like, but yet at the same time, when like the cards are down, you can tell that he really cares about his crew. Like when one of his teammates gets frozen, he goes up to this like fourth dimensional godlike being and says, "Don't do this." The guy's got layers. He's not just a stereotypical "I'm the captain and what I say goes." He's actually got this lovely soft side to him, but at the same time, he's not like a carbon copy of the guy in the yellow shirt.
Data?
The original captain for the original show.
Oh, Kirk.
Captain Kirk. Yeah, he could have just been like a Captain Kirk ripoff, but he's really not. He's got like this wonderful sense of gravitas, and he's and I like that he's not just a nice captain that everyone gets along with. Like he does have his rough moments, but at the end of the day, he is the captain that everyone puts their trust in because he knows what's best, and he actually does care about his crew.
You know, I really like the point that you bring up about this particular captain in this series being different than Captain Kirk, because the original series of Star Trek, William Shatner, you know, that was basically the series that made him a breakout star, and that particular archetype of character is he's kind of like the bad boy, sexy, rule breaker kind of captain, whereas Jean-Luc Picard is a lot more seasoned, a lot more controlled. He's just as passionate as Captain Kirk, but just in a different way because he's older, he's mature, he's seen a lot more things, and he has like a lot more things under his belt. So I do like the fact that you picked up on that you have two great captains, but they are completely different. So he's not a carbon copy of the captain that came before him.
Totally, and even just like the fact of like I say, Captain Kirk is like a loose captain, doesn't care about the rules. But what I love about Jean-Luc is that he's actually a man about the rules.
Right.
Like he actually really thinks that they're there for a reason, but not in like that stereotypical army leader type of way. Like he thinks the rules are there for a reason, but he will still be open to other people's like there's a scene where on the ship and like, "God, are you really gonna do this?" And he says, "Well, do you have any other options? I'm willing to listen." "No, then we're gonna do this." So like he is willing to compromise if he thinks it's in the best interest, but at the end of the day, he believes that I'm still the captain and what I say goes.
Right. And so what did you think of some of the other characters like Worf? What did you think about him?
Well, that's the thing I think about this first episode is it like for characters like Worf, he's the guy with the forehead, right?
Yes, he's a Klingon and he is the security. He does security for the ship.
Right. Now he looks like an interesting character, but in this first episode, we really don't see much from him. I think the biggest thing he does is there's a point where they're evacuating the ship, and the ship kind of splits in two, and Captain Kirk and he takes like an away party, and they get on the smaller part of the ship in order to face this fourth dimensional god being, and Worf is helping to evacuate the rest of the people in the top part of the ship, and he says to him, it's against my nature to let my commander go down with the ship and not be there with him. But Captain says, no, you got to do this because even though you have like these honors, you are still a member of Starfleet first, and you will obey my orders. So I'm interested in the character. He seems like he's got a lot of potential coming from like this very warring like race, and just seeing how that upbringing is challenged by him being a member of Starfleet. But that said, in this first episode, that's all we get from him. So I'm interested in him, but it's far yet to have an opinion on him yet.
Cool. Okay, give me your thoughts on Data.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, he was one of my favorite characters of the series.
Oh, this is going to be awkward then. So again, it is the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
But like, Data just seems really annoying for me. Granted, he hasn't done too much yet, but one, he just seems like a Spock ripoff, down to the fact that literally one of the characters turns to him and say, "Hey, do you have point of use? Because you're sounding a lot like a Vulcan." And so he just kind of feels like a ripoff, and I haven't seen anything that really like separates him from a Spock-like character. And two, just the whole, oh look, I'm an android. What is this emotion you are feeling? And the whole Pinocchio complex. It's just something that has been done to death, even by 1987 standards. It was already pretty done. Like, there's a great show called Red Dwarf that came out just a few years later, which basically parried that fantastically. Just the whole robot trope. So for me, like, we'll see. Maybe he'll grow with me. Maybe it is just like a first episode type of a thing. But right now, like, nothing about his character is really interesting me. And
ouch.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Like,
ouch. But you gotta give it. So if you opt to move forward and watch more episodes, you'll see there are a lot more layers to the Data character, because as you said, that trope has been done again and again and again. But I do like what Gene Roddenberry did with the character, because there's some interesting developments that follow. But like you said, this was your first episode, so first impression.
Yeah, I'm open-minded to see it, but right now, yeah, he's not exactly my favorite at the moment.
All right. Well, you can't have a successful crew without a captain and the second in command. So that brings me to Steven Riker, which is the second in command on the ship. So what did you think about his character?
He's weird. It's funny because, like, considering they went so drastically away from, like, the William Shatner type character, it feels like with the second in command, he just feels like William Shatner. Like, oh, well, instead of William Shatner being the captain, he's now the second in command. Like, he's the second in command who doesn't always play by the rules. Like, in the first meeting, they're talking to each other, and apparently got in trouble because he went against his old captain's orders, because the old captain wanted him to transport down to a planet that was going to be really unsafe for him, and he refused to do it because he didn't want to risk his captain's life like that. Which Jean-Luc doesn't really like, because he likes a man who follows orders. I think there's a good rapport back in there, but like at the end of the day, he seems like a noble man, but he seems like that very kind of 1960s hero of, we must do what is right, and I don't like. Granted, he for one, he gets introduced halfway through this episode, and he's just kind of wandering about for most of it. So he just seems like a Captain Kirk ripoff. It's just like, oh, so it's basically the next generation with a few interesting, unique characters, and then just carbon copies of what came before.
Interesting. All right. Well, then, moving along, characters. What did you think about what's her name? Counselor Deanna Troi, and she's, as I said before, the counselor to the ship.
Oh, is that what she is? I was trying to figure out what she does, because it seemed like she's the telepath, right? Right, yeah, so it seemed like she was
no, I wouldn't say telepath, she's an empath. So she can feel what someone else is feeling.
Right, like it's very emotional based. Yeah, okay. Well, except though, she's very emotional based, except there's a scene where like she literally communicates to the second in command It's like, oh, hello, mister, you remember me? Ooh, don't tell anyone that you're, like, that we can talk like this. Which is probably the goofiest moment in the episode, by the way. It was, like, the part of the episode that felt the most dated. Because, like, there's locked eyes and, oh, like, look, I can talk to you with my brain. So, that's kind of telepathical.
Well, it has been a long time since I've seen the episode. I remember that the main focus of the power was that she was an empath, but I guess it sounds like she had a few other things up her sleeve. So how did you find her character? Did you think that she was necessary? Did you like her interaction? Did you feel that she was a strong character? Because at this point, I believe there's like one other main female character, but I can't remember if she's introduced this early, which we'll get into. So Deanna Troi she's basically surrounded by men. So how did you feel about having this female character as part of the main cast? Do you feel like her character like held up? What are your thoughts?
Well, one, if you, to your first question, was she necessary? Well, I do like how she was used in this with she was the first person to kind of like realize that the base at Farpoint was an actual creature, because she's the only person who can like sense like that the building around her is actually feeling something. So I like the conclusion of that. In terms of her being the only female, I think that there are actually a few other female characters. There's the Doctor, who gets introduced at the end, who seems to have an interesting connection with Picard, and she's also got like the son running about. But there's also, it's actually kind of my favorite character. There's like, again, the woman with like the really modern hair for some reason. She's kind of like I don't know what she is, but she's like kind of like the hothead of the group. She's the one who
She wearing a yellow.
Yes.
So I think that's Tasha Yar, and she's the head of security.
Oh, right. Then but Worf's also there, isn't
Well,
he?
she is the number. Is she the commander? So I believe she's the commander, and then he's under her.
Right. Okay. Well, either way, I thought she was cool. And there's this little moment where she's when they're in the court of post-atomic hell. There's this great sort of moment where she's talking about how she used to live in like a really like terrible part of the world, and it was Starfleet that really gave her life purpose. Like she's one of the few people who like actually got a little bit of backstory in this, because like I said, the episode just kind of throws you in. You don't really get to know too much about the characters. Just like, here are the characters, and they're a crew doing something. So I like that. So I kind of drew to her because she's one of the people who actually had some sort of backstory that was given to us, and I just kind of like hotheads. and she's fucking cool. Like she's a
badass.
Yeah, there's a guy who tries to kill them, and she just like bloody flips him.
Oh, I always loved Tasha Yar. She was a badass. Oh, so if you like hotheads, then you'll appreciate the Worf character then, if you decide to keep moving forward and watching them.
Well, like I said, Worf seemed to be one of the more interesting characters, because, like I said, he comes from, like, this warlike race, right? So, seeing how those elements of his upbringing conflict with this, like, Starfleet training is something I'm really interested in. But again, the episode doesn't really have time for him. It's just kind of like, hello, I'm a character too, and he has this one little interesting interaction, but then we don't really see him. So, yeah, I think that's my main problem. I think my main problem with this is that it's got some interesting elements, and I think the ending is really cool, where the station at Farpoint actually becomes like this big alien jellyfish, and it's, again, the effects of these alien jellyfish are so good, and the scoring's amazing. The only thing is, like, everything that kind of built up to it, just, I don't know, it doesn't do a great job of bringing newcomers in. Like, I think it really expects that Star Trek people are watching this, and, like, for example, I don't even know what the ship is doing. In the classic series, right? They had, like, this little speech at the beginning where it's like, we're on a spaceship, and our whole mission is to explore the unknown. That's our goal. But in this, it doesn't really tell you if that's what they're doing or not. Like, or the opening line is just, so, some stuff's going down at Farpoint, so we're going to figure out what's going on at Farpoint.
So you don't feel like their mission is obvious or stated well enough to understand like what these characters are doing?
Not at all. They never state what they're doing. They're saying, hey, we're going to Farpoint. And like it's... And if they are on this mission of exploring unknown stuff, then why do they have, like, families on board? When they're evacuating the ship because it's going to split in two, you see all of, like, these different families. I'm like, what? What's all these families doing on this, like, ship that's exploring the unknown dangers of space? So, yeah, that's the thing. Is like, it doesn't tell you what's really going on. It's just like, you're in space, these people are part of Starfleet, and... these guys are doing this. The only, I think, really introductions we get is with the second in command and the Doctor, who are on board Farpoint, and they join, and the episode is him joining the crew of like, like the captain's like, I don't think I trust you because you don't follow orders, and the second in command's like, yeah, I don't follow orders, but you know, I'm the second in command you need, and. That's the closest we get to any kind of introduction, but it happens halfway through the episode, so, like, you've already had, like, 30 minutes of them doing their own thing beforehand. And at the end of the episode, I still don't know what they're doing. Are they flying through space, or were they just on a mission for Farpoint? What is the ship doing? So, I have mixed opinions about this. Again, I think the best part that I do like it is its world building. I like when the creature this fourth dimensional being is like telling everything about their history, and like he morphs into like a World War II costume, and Captain Picard's like, oh, it's been a century since we've worn those silly costumes. You do get an idea of what Starfleet is. It's an idea of like where humans actually stop being so savage to each other and actually kind of work together on doing, you know, political stuff in space. I like that. But, like, you don't really get a sense of any of the characters' backstories. The only character that's really fleshed out is Captain Luke Picard. Otherwise, everyone's just kind of there doing the thing. I wish it, like, actually took the time to establish these characters and who they are. And have more of a clear story. Like, it's merging the story about this fourth dimensional being judging humanity for its savagery, whilst also being about this colony that's found this alien life form and forcing it to be a futuristic city so they could be a part of Starfleet. And they do not mesh well. Like, I know it was made in the 1980s, but this still has some real big pacing issues. Like, there'll be an interesting action sequence, but then they'll just, like, in the middle of it, they'll just, like, walk down the street and then have a conversation about, like, oh, I'm sorry I didn't say hi to you when you came on board the ship. I like those little moments of interactions, but they're not really placed in the right moments.
And refresh my memory. Did anybody use a taser in this episode?
I think they had like these little remote controls that they were gonna like no, that guy put it on stun.
Yes, yes. Yeah. I'm such a nerd. I wanted one of those so bad. I was like, I really, really, really want a phaser myself.
Did they always look like remote controls though? I thought they were like gun shaped.
So you're thinking of Star Trek, the original series with Captain Picard, or excuse me, Captain Kirk. In the Next Generation, they look less like guns and more like I hate to call them remote controls. That just does not sound as cool. But yes, they look like remote controls, but sleek remote controls.
Because I didn't concentrate on them too much, but I just went, that man just tried to kill someone with a remote control. Interesting.
Okay, and then now let me ask you a question. So I've seen all of the Next Generation episodes, so all seasons. So because this is your first time watching any of the episodes, episode 1, are there any phrases that stood out to you that you think might be one of those catchphrases of the series?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I generally don't really like to pay attention to catchphrases. He said the word "let's beam down to the planet." That's kind of famous, isn't it? Even though Scotty wasn't there. last point, who's their Scotty on this team? Who's the transporter guy?
There is no. So you'll meet that person later.
Oh, okay.
So there is a Scotty.
Yeah. So like I said, I it's weird how modern and I think really above its time it feels in a lot of respects. Like again, like I love just the amount of diversity that's in here. I do love like there's a whole bunch of different characters here. I just felt like it didn't do a great job of introducing them, which I think is a very common complaint of shows of that time. Was I think like especially in American TV, it was made for people who didn't sit down and watch the first episode and then go on. It was made for people to just like, oh well, whatever episode they land on, that will be the first episode they see. It seems like a lot of American shows treated the first episode like that, like just another episode. But yeah. So, okay, my impressions of it are, as the story goes, it could have been a lot better, again, like, and I hope that will happen when they focus their story down more and not try to say everything. I think maybe, like, they were trying to do so much because it was their first episode. But, I love Jean-Luc. I'm interested in some of the other characters and getting to know them more. And, again, the effects and the sound design is just fantastic.
So, would you recommend this series to someone else?
I don't know if I would recommend it just yet. Again, like, it's, I think maybe, like, one of the reasons why I didn't go into it till now was because you really need to be a nerd, I think, to enjoy this show. Because it does not pull any punches when it comes to that. It's like, you're in the future, there's aliens, there's people on this planet, there's giant jellyfish creatures, there's fourth dimensional beings. You know, it just throws you into it. I think, but just because of how big it's gotten in pop culture and just like how classic nerdy it is, I definitely think there's going to be stuff in there. It kind of reminds me of bits of what I really liked about Stargate, but it's too soon. Right now I'm interested, but I wouldn't recommend it to anyone just yet.
Okay, still too new. So you feel like you need a few more episodes under your belt to really determine how you feel about it?
Totally, yeah. So
that's fair.
Yeah. We'll see how things change next episode.
Okay. That's fair. That's all you can ask for.
Any other questions, or shall we move on to the next corner?
Let's move on to the next corner.
Alright, and this is a new corner introducing the Things We're Excited About corner. I guess we're calling it that. The Things We're Excited About corner.
So, one of the things I'm super looking forward to is Stranger Things Season 3 dropping July 4th. I am so freaking excited. And you know, July 4th, I'm going to be binging the entire season. I am so freaking looking forward to it. And that's actually going to be my first blog post on our website, nerdsonacouch.com. So I'm basically going to do the top 10 things you need to know to get you ready for season 3.
Interesting.
I'm so excited. Cool. I cannot wait. And we have to do like a separate podcast to just cover the season. I'm so excited for it.
All right, cool. I was kind of disappointed with season 2, but hey, hopefully season 3 will win me back.
Here's hoping.
Yeah, exactly. We'll find out when we record that episode. Right.
And what about you? What are you looking forward to that's coming up?
Well, actually, talking of Netflix, something that was just released on Netflix was what I think is the entire season of an anime, which I have a very hard time pronouncing, but I'll try. Evon Genesis Galian. You know what I'm on about? The big. It's like the classic anime that most people have. Neon Genesis Evangelion. God, I can't say it. Okay, the classic anime with the big robots. It's something that, like, I'm not usually a huge mecha person, but, like, it's such a big anime for, like, just anime in the West. It was, like, one of the few things, like, that broke anime out over here, and I've never really seen it. So, you know, I'm looking forward to that now that it's all on Netflix. I'm like, hey, okay, well, now I have no excuse. So I'm going to be watching that, and from what I've heard, people say it's really good.
It is good, but I'll just leave it there. It is good, but...
Well, yeah, nothing's perfect.
Because I don't want to spoil anything. Yeah, it's good. but
I heard it's got a real weird ending.
right, it just goes in a really weird direction, and things are like there are a lot of plot holes that are left unopened because they've just veered in such a really weird way.
Right, well, I'll good or bad, I'm gonna be watching it. You know, like for me, I'm relatively new to the world of anime. I got into it like a few years ago, so you know, I'm still kind of catching up on my basics.
Ah, okay. All right. Well, that's cool.
Well then, if that's all wrapped up, this has been Nerd on the Couch. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Au revoir.